All right, perfect. Are you guys all right? All right.
Hi, Linda.
Can't hear me.
I can't hear you.
Mute button.
Oh, everybody's muted. That's right. I'm sorry. I gotta unmute her. Everybody's muted on things. I gotta see everybody. Hold on. I need to unmute her. There you go.
Okay, that better?
Yeah.
Perfect.
So
Okay.
everyone's muted when they first come in the room, and then I have to unmute everyone. So as we learn how to do all this.
Okay, very good. Thanks. I was in the room too early, so then I left and came back in because I didn't want to be too early.
Oh, okay. No, it's good. Early's good. We're just trying to I'm trying to queue up my the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Make sure it's the only one up there so I don't have to make a mistake.
Yeah, I understand how that is.
Yeah. Now, where are you? In Virginia?
No, Gambrels, Maryland.
Oh, Maryland. Okay.
Yeah.
Forgive me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out where everybody is.
No problem.
Yeah, you work for Derek's group, right? Working with Derek? Maryland?
Okay, that's better. Should I unmute now?
Yes.
I mean, should I mute myself?
You can if you want to. I'm unmuting everybody as they come in. Hi, Zamoria. Shelly. Just going to give everybody a little bit of time to come on board to get in the room.
How's everybody?
Hello.
Pretty good.
That's good.
Okay.
Putting stuff on Facebook trying to scare other people.
Yeah. I was trying to get, so glad we got our link, but then it was a little challenging with setting up the meetings ourselves. So I apologize for all the back and forth about the link and everything. So hopefully everyone will get the right link and come on in the room.
Yeah.
Well, we finally got it, so that was good. I have somebody on 301-938. Great. We have another minute before we get started. That's right. That's right.
Hi,
So,
this is Dante Robertson.
hi.
I joined the call with me. Hi, how are you?
Good. How's everybody?
Okay.
Everyone's fine.
Good. We're going to give everyone a little bit more time to come in. But the first thing is if you want to put your name in your name, organization, city, state in the chat box, that'd be great. And if you can, if you'd like to show us your faces, that'd be really awesome. Hi. Oh, I'll unmute you right now. Just getting to know all of the things that we need to do here. Somehow I can't unmute Stephen, so Stephen, unmute yourself. You guys can unmute yourselves so we can say hello. There you go.
Hi, this is Zamoria. I don't see the chat box.
In the center of the screen, you should see a little thing that says share screen, and next to it, there's a box that says chat. Just click on that box and it'll pop up on the right-hand side.
This is Shantae Robertson with Maryland Sickle Cell Disease Association again. I am taking this remotely on the go, so I will not, unfortunately, be able to comply with filling out the chat box and what have you. Sorry about that.
Okay. Well, you can just tell us yours verbally if you like. So we have a little on the agenda today. There's a little thing just asking, you know, what is everyone doing to stay positive in this era of COVID-19? So anything that you do that helps you to remain positive or peaceful in this time that we're in, acknowledging that, you know, we are all together here on the Zoom platform as we normally would be, but this has become a way of life in the last 2 weeks. So if you have something that you'd like to share either in the chat box or verbal, you're all unmuted, and we are happy to have you, you know, share, you know, with us your thoughts. Okay, so Dr. Wanda is, she just texted me, she's coming on, she just wanted to know what, she was checking her email and she was looking to come on board. So we're gonna get started as soon as another minute or so. Karen, can you unmute yourself? Because I've tried to unmute you, so maybe you guys muted yourselves. And Shelly, I see you are as well. Hi, Bailey.
Hi.
Hi. So I've unmuted everybody. I just wanted to say thank you for joining. Yeah, they've muted themselves.
Oh, okay.
So if you'd like to mute yourself, that's great. I just wanted to make sure that you had the ability to mute and unmute yourselves, because that was one of the boxes that I had to check when we were setting this up, was whether or not we were going to be muting everyone upon arrival. And so it's wonderful to see everybody's face. Derek, go ahead and show us that. So put your camera on if you can. We really like to see everybody's face as much as possible. We know that folks are on the go, and we're just happy that you've joined today. We're going to talk a little bit about educational programs, but I see some of the chat is happening. Linda says she is not worried about it. It's good. I'll say that the question is, what are you doing to stay positive and peaceful in this era of COVID-19? And I'll say that I'm praying a lot in the whole situation. In my my day-to-day work, we provide food for 11 neighborhood communities, neighborhoods in South Pittsburgh, and we are open, and it's a lot to be able to handle some of the people who have lost their jobs, because it's a big restaurant district, and so we are serving, and it's you know, so I'm praying a lot in this time. So you can either put it in the chat box, or we can go around if anybody has anything that they would like to share.
Well, this is Zamoria Brandon from Philadelphia. I just wanted to share that even though it feels like we are being disconnected, I decided that it was time to reach out to family and friends just to say, how are you doing? Do you need anything? What can I do to support you? So I've been doing that over the last several days, and that seems to be keeping people uplifted and inspired. And then for myself personally, I have joined a few online meditation groups to be able to keep myself balanced.
That's amazing. That's important. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for
Mm-hmm.
that.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, I'm going to go on and share my screen. I do see that Dr. Sherney is here. Thank you very much for coming on. And I don't have two screens today, so when I don't see you, when I'm looking at this, I hope that this, that I'm able to do this. Share. Wait, 1 second. Start with. There you go. Now I gotta see how to share it. Okay. All right. Can everyone see the screen that says Synergy Educational Support? All right, great.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Well, that's great. So we're just going to talk a little bit about educational support programs in sickle cell. The agenda today, we did already do the introductions, names, and how we're staying positive. And then we're just moving to the didactic lecture, which I will give today. And then we're going to have our guest expert, Dr. Wanda Witten-Sherney, who's going to talk a little bit about a successful project that she's implemented and some of the ways that she is working, in Michigan. And then I will have a case presentation by Michael, and then we're going to have the entire group weigh in on how you might address that case. And then he's going to tell you how he actually did address that case. And then we'll have Dr. Sherney give some expert points about that particular case, and then some open discussion, and we'll end. All right. So getting right into it, children with sickle cell disease may face unique challenges and barriers to achieving their potential, including frequent absences due to the basic management of the disease, as well as unpredictable episodes of illness, fatigue, cognitive impairment, and learning disability. And that's basically individual. So if not every kid is going to have the same educational pathway. So the Individuals with Disabilities Act has 6 key principles that are applied to children who have disabilities outside, way outside sickle cell disease. But some of our kids do have intellectual disability, some cognitive impairment, and also have dual diagnosis. So may have dual diagnosis. So if keeping in mind that every child is not going to fall under this, but is eligible for it because of sickle cell being listed among in the ADA under having disabilities, being a disability. So the 6 principles are free and appropriate education, free evaluation, an individualized education plan in the least restrictive environment, meaning that they should be allowed to be in general education classes, parent participation, and then some procedural safeguards. And this came from Smart Kids. So if you, I'm going to send out this slide deck when it's over. If you click on the 6 principles, you'll get more in-depth information about each one of those. We're going to focus today on the individualized education plan and the 504 as we discuss what the differences are. Federal law requires that an IEP and individualized education plan include the following elements. Basically, the child's level at present level, functional performance, having measurable annual goals, and having a statement of special education and any services related to that, any type of accommodations that are made, and then specific program modifications and accommodations. And this should be reviewed periodically through the school year. This is not a document that is changed throughout the school year, but it should be monitored closely. It is a very involved process. So if you've ever had to help someone through it, it is a legal document, and it ensures that the school is responding in an appropriate manner to help keep the family involved and also keep the child moving towards their potential, even with a disability. Children who have an IEP also have a diagnosis, which makes it a little bit different, a lot different than someone who has a 504 plan. So a 504 plan is a set of accommodations in the classroom environment to help protect your child and follow the regular curriculum. So it's back to that general education. It's less formal and involved in the IEP, and it doesn't change the instruction itself. So The example is the student who uses a wheelchair but doesn't need academic supports, whatever 504 plan. A student may qualify for a 504 plan but not an IEP. Every child with sickle cell disease can, every parent can request a 504 plan for their child based under this law. You might hear the word accommodations being thrown around a little bit. Knowing what accommodations can happen outside of a 504 plan. A lot of parents have strong feelings about whether they want their child to have a 504 plan. They have fears of being labeled, and these are fears that don't, when you can reassure the parents that although labels, they're becoming less and less stigmatizing, and most parents whose child has a 504 plan do report that they don't feel labeled. They just have they've been encouraged to use the accommodations. So accommodations are simply changes that the teacher can make to help your child learn more effectively. Rearranging the classroom and so forth are some of the most common ones. But it could be that the children who have sickle cell disease, because they are affected by extremes of heat or cold, may not go out during fire drills. It might be something that they are kept in when it's very cold outside, and that you don't want your child playing outside when it's cold. Ensuring that they have are able to stay back when the weather is bad. So
some of the other accommodations that are general are, we at least like to visit. Sometimes our youth are encouraged to carry water bottles. So one of the accommodations may be that they are, allowed to use the restroom more so than maybe the average student, just because we're encouraging them to drink more water and stay hydrated. Therefore, they need to use the restroom more frequently. And it can come down to something as simple as the seating. If you have that conversation with the teacher as a part of what we call professional development, junior might sit close to the door, not that he or she sits in the back of the classroom where they have the longest way to go to excuse themselves, go to the bathroom. So they may sit right next to the door, regardless of what their name starts or ends with. Some teachers do it alphabetically because there might be frequent disruption in the class.
So I just want to talk a little bit about the education support program in Pittsburgh that was started in 2006. Give some background on this. Children were missing an average of 29 to 31 days a school year. They were falling behind. Basically, this is due to the chronic disease management of having clinic visits, seeing specialists, and some of them were on chronic transfusion. Also, acute episodes of illness, so whether they're hospitalized or at home recovering from recent hospitalization, or if they're just too sick to attend school but not sick enough to require hospitalization. So the things that were happening, we uncovered a number of reasons why kids weren't going to school, but because they were missing so much school, one of the things that was happening was that if they were hospitalized, they weren't able to get their own homework before they returned back to school within 3 or 4 days, and they were falling behind because they missed the instruction, and as soon as they got back, they were asked to test. And so there were a lot of issues around their academic performance, having that a lot of communication needed to happen. So the performance barriers were that they didn't have the educational support that was in place, they repeated absences, and they would return to the classroom unprepared, and that led to the poor performance. So the objectives of the educational support program was to provide this positive educational support, improve their academic achievement, and provide educational advocacy support for parents when addressing educational issues, so that when they went to ask for a 504 or to find out if their child could be tested and receive an IEP, that they had some other diagnosis going on or needed to have a diagnosis, they didn't know where to turn, they didn't know how to navigate the system, and they really didn't have the support needed. So providing those supports was two of the these are the primary objectives. So opening up the communication pathways was very important, and it's really started with the parents and the caregivers, reaching out to them and getting the approval to work with the schools, the hospitals, and to really work together on addressing this. This was one of the key pieces because we had to go directly to the school superintendent and do it. We did it in a top-down way. So it wasn't necessarily going to each and every school, and that you can do that, and that's one method, but going to the superintendent and assure that all 56 schools at that time were able to come on board. And if there was a child with sickle cell disease in any of those schools, we could work with their schools and their administrators. And then working with the hospital system to ensure that when the child is hospitalized, that we were able to provide an intervention for them. That was another key piece. So program activation was based on absence. If the child was absent, the parent could activate, the school could activate, and the hospital could activate. Regardless of which one of these entities knew that the child was out of school, they could call CSCF and get a response. So the response.
Hold on 1 second. Can you click back one? One of the interesting parts about it is what we found is some of our older students, say you're a junior or a senior, sometimes, unfortunately, when they would be hospitalized, they would call us and activate our services. So if they had numerous tests coming up or something, or they had papers, they would call and say, hey, Mr. Mike, can you please get in touch with my counselor because I'm not going to be able to make the due date on that particular paper, and it plays a large part in my grade. It has a high percentage value. So it was kind of interesting. We never suspected that some of those older children would actually initiate, they would be in the hospital and call from cell phones, because everyone has one, and activate the education support program. So we were very, very pleased that that was kind of an offshoot of what we had started.
Okay, so as the coordinator has a 36-hour response window, opens the case file, makes the appropriate contacts with the schools and parents, and then most services are provided within 24 hours. This works so well at this point that it's actually less than that, but in the beginning, when you're getting started, this is one of the things that we put in place to try to have some goals and some measures of moving from the 4-day response down to a 3-day, down to getting things done in a timely manner. So this is also affected by the student-teacher relationship. We found that some teachers were very excited about giving homework, and it was based on their thoughts or perceptions about whether or not they were going to receive that homework back. And it was really interesting that we had to really work with the teachers to say, regardless of what your perception is or what your expectation is, we want you to expect that you'll get it back. We want to have that conversation, because these are perceived attitudes that come across that are not typically they're not on the forefront. They're not sharing them widely, but they began to trust us a little bit more and really share, why it was hard to get this, them to give us homework for some students. And then we were able to talk with the parents and smooth out those relationships. So the program results were, we enrolled 167 families. Services were provided, 4.5 services per week. Direct services, so we had assignment retrieval, 6 to 8 assignments, depending on how many kids were hospitalized, and talking to schools 2 to 3 times a week. Overall, the increase in academic achievement was at a 2.01 to 2.7. That is much higher now. But the decrease in absences went from 31 to 19 days of school year. That's almost a full week of school. That's a little bit more than a full week of school. So 96% of children reported that they reported to school feeling better prepared. And then now this is an update to, I just told you that. And so we have this interesting thing that we have not had a dropout in, I don't know, how many years is it now?
It's been quite a while. It's been probably over 5 years, 6 years now.
Wow.
And most of them are pursuing, or pursuing college or post-secondary education. So Some parent testimonials, I won't read them to you, but I included them here because one of the ones that I really feel is important is that the middle one says, there are times when I feel like I'm alone. Just having someone to act as a mediator or spokesperson makes all the difference in the world. This program provides my family now with additional knowledge and resources for continued stability as much as possible with this disease. And I literally, these were all taken directly from the parents as they were submitted.
And a lot of times, as you guys well know, I'm preaching to the choir, but some of our parents, unfortunately, they were never really good in the academic realm. So they feel even less equipped to kind of advocate for their children because they may not have had the best of high school experiences or been limited to only having a grade school or middle school education. So they really feel behind the 8 ball. But when they have that organization willing to advocate for them, it's really, you see a change in them as well, as far as empowering them to be a better parent, if for lack of a better word.
This is further exacerbated by when you're dealing with grandparents that are taking care of the children. So it's really important. So we expanded the program to include professional tutors and tutorial sessions. We had a pre-assessment that was done, and we had a professional tutor go into the home to provide 9 to 12 weeks of tutorial and at least 1 session a week. The majority of them needed 2, and we did a post-assessment. So in this, the methods were to recruit, engage the parents, and provide that continuous support. We had students at all levels, so K to 12, and also we had college students. And then here's the results. So in this, on this particular slide, in the pre and post assessment, you see every one of these kids did pretty well, much better after the post assessment, depending on whether they were reading or math. And so there was a lot of movement. Some of them were very, very just outstanding in the way that they were. We had kids move from reading at a jump 2 reading levels over the 11-week period. So it was outstanding. The standardized testing improvement, we had a lot of movement. We had 3 kids that did much better. And I have to cheat on my standardized testing one because I always get confused on my numbers.
One was if they achieved a level of 1, it was below basic, and then it went to proficient at 2, and then 3 would be right.
I'll read it so I can get it right. 1 is below basic, then 2 is basic, 3 is proficient, and then 4 is advanced. So looking at here, we're going from below basic to basic, and then this one is going from proficient to advanced. And so we had this child here move from basic to advanced, and so they're just doing a great job. All of them moved forward, and so it was really successful. However, I love to think that our kids, even the kids who are doing what someone would say acceptable, like in this in basic, are jumping 2 levels. So it's exciting. The ending GPAs, when we're looking at, a lot of people say, where did you start, where did you end? Some of them didn't move at all, which was interesting. But then we had our better students moving, a little bit, and then we also had some students who were doing average on the 4-point scale and moving, quite a bit. So excited about that. So discoveries and opportunities, there was a need for increased knowledge of individuals with the IDA. Physical education requirements, limitations. People were limiting our kids from participating in physical ed and dinging them, really just holding them accountable to something that they didn't let them participate, but then they would give them a poor grade because of it. So a lot of the advocacy was around educating the teachers and the administration. Putting 504 plans in place for everyone, understanding when you needed an IEP, and then we had 2 families need us to go as far as engaging the Educational Law Center, and both cases were won. In both cases, both of the children received free college education for life. So now we're going to switch gears to Dr. Wanda Witten-Sherney and allow her to talk about her wonderful program, and she'll tell you all about it. We've given her a little bit, but I do want to say that she is the CEO and medical director of the Sickle Cell Disease Association of Michigan, and she is also a part of MARAC, and she's a lot of work groups and think tanks. She's just a friend of families. She has taken care of how many children? Did I hear? It was
I think the way I calculated over 30 years, it's been about 1,200.
wow, lots and lots of kids, but truly an advocate for sickle cell disease. And she didn't want me to say a whole lot. She said, please don't go on and on and on. But I want to say that when I met Dr. Sherney, she was doing her Sickle Cell 101. She's best known for her Sickle Cell 101 that is absolutely perfect. And Heal the Healer session, that if you have not been to one, that is one session that you need to make your way to the next time that you see it offered in any conference. We're really happy to have her. We're blessed to have her. And I'm just going to turn it over to you now, Dr. Sherney. Thank you for being here.
Okay. All right. So I don't have slides, so I guess you're just gonna have to look at my face the whole time. And I don't know why it looks like I'm half cut off. Can you all see me okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So Andrea asked me, and Andrea, I love you as much as you love me. So let's just make that clear. But she asked me to share a little bit about a program that we designed called Project Enrich. And I do have reports every year that I had to give to my funding sources. So if people are interested in those reports, I'd be happy to share them. And Andrea's already done a little bit of my work for me because she talked about the need. And so she mentioned missing school, and she mentioned, you miss school because you're sick, you miss school because you had a doctor's appointment, you had to come for a transfusion. And then there's also the cognitive issues, whether you had an overt stroke or maybe you had a silent infarct. And now we're learning that silent infarcts aren't so silent. That then when kids were coming to clinic and their parents were saying, they're dropping off, their grades are low, getting lower, than we do an MRI and we see these silent infarcts, so we know they're not so silent. But the other issue that really is the case that I found is, we always talk about this cycle of the red blood cell sickles, and that part of the body doesn't get any oxygen, and then that leads to more sickling, and it's a vicious cycle. And I think that can happen with kids with sickle cell disease too, in terms of missing school, falling behind, then not wanting to go to school because they are behind, or they're getting teased because they're little and skinny and their eyes are yellow, and it's just school avoidance issues. And, I think that can be a big part of it. And sometimes it finally leads to the kids dropping out of school. And so that was kind of the reason, after seeing Andrea's project and kind of adapting that to us, that's what really stimulated us to try to get something together. So we developed Project Enrich. It had 4 components. Basically, we have transportation. So we go to the families' homes and we pick up the kids and we bring them to the SCDAA. And then we would have a family meal, so everybody's sitting down, eating together. We teach them healthy eating habits and feed them healthy food, and have an opportunity to talk about, current events or whatever, in that kind of a setting. And then we would have what they call the time to tutor. So what we did was we had adults living with sickle cell disease tutoring students living with sickle cell disease. So there was a kind of mentorship that was going on there too. And then we had relaxation. So we had yoga, and we had music therapy, and we had art therapy, and we had Tai Chi. And then we had special events, like we would take them to a basketball game, we'd get a bus or what have you, or we would have special academic programs where you had to pick someone famous and memorize a quote, and then you'd have to get in front of everybody and say your quote and talk about why you picked that person. And then you'd have to do a vision board about, your quote and the person and so forth. And part of that was just to get the kids the exposure to, getting in front of a group and making a presentation. And so I think that, the other thing that we did was we did a career path for everything. The program was from 3rd grade to 12th grade. And so everybody had to have a career plan. They had to decide at this point, what do you think you want to be when you grow up? and then you would talk to our career coordinator. Hold on a second, please. Okay, so and then you had to talk to the career coordinator about what you wanted to achieve and how you would get there, and she would put you into a step program in terms of determining what would be the proper steps to get to where you wanted to be. I think, and we also help with the 504 plans and IEPs if kids needed those. In terms of, oh, the other component was homework help. So, and that's really the one we kind of really stole from Andrea. And that was, he had 2 homework helpers. And the problem was, first of all, getting them into the hospital. So they had to go through the whole volunteer program. So that they get the TB skin test, and if they needed to test X-ray or what have you, so they could be a volunteer, and then they could go into the hospital, they could visit the patients that were well enough to engage, and then they could find out, get all the teacher information, and then they would go to the teacher and pick up the homework, deliver it back to the child, help them with the homework, and then deliver the completed homework back to the school. So that would help them, keep them from getting behind. So that's basically how the program ran. And additionally, we had initially funding from Community Development Block Grant. And I don't know how many of you have ever worked with Block Grant before, but my goodness, the documentation is just outrageous. I mean, you have notebooks of things. So, and after 2 years, we couldn't get the funding anymore. And then we had some funding from a couple of different foundations, but they were programs that would only fund us for 1 year. At one point, we got 2 years because we added 2 patients who had hemophilia and also had sickle cell disease, and we added 2 tutors that had hemophilia, so that allowed us to expand. But presently, we don't have funding, and the program is not currently running. We're looking for funding. The most expensive part of the program, but also the most important part of the program, was the transportation. Because 85% of the kids came on the van, you know, and if you weren't coming on the van, you basically weren't coming. But then there was this challenge of the kids being sick and missing. So I'm paying these guys to go pick up the kids, and then the kids aren't able to come. So I have a $400 van bringing 4 kids, you know, to the SCBAA. So that became a challenge. But the good part about the transportation, we used the same company for the whole 6 years and the same van drivers, and they really got to know the kids, you know, and they were supposed to call the parents before they went to pick up the kids. And then if they didn't pick up, they weren't supposed to go and get them, but the drivers would say, I know sometimes this mother doesn't pick up the phone and she's there, so we want to go and make sure. So the drivers were really invested, and, you know, they would really tell me if they thought there was a problem, like this kid didn't seem comfortable going back in the house, and you need to kind of check out to make sure what's going on in that home. So that was really good that we had the same transportation company. We had some similar successes with report cards and getting better, and we looked at science, math, and English. Those were the things that we looked at, and we always had kids doing better. But I think that kids typically do better on the last final report card marking than they do on the first report card marking anyway. So one of the big challenges for getting funding was trying to help people to understand what was the real advantage, or what were the deliverables, or what were the outcomes of the program. So we did use the homework, and we did use the fact that nobody in the program ever failed or was not, you know, promoted to the next grade. And then we always talked about the kids that went on. We had kids that went to junior college, we had kids that went to 4-year colleges, and we had kids that finished the program and then went straight into employment. So we didn't have any kids that finished and then didn't do anything, you know, or just were at home or what have you. But I think that the one thing that I would really try to get people to understand is that one of the biggest deliverables of this program was the fact that the only person in the room that didn't have sickle cell disease was me, you know, and that there's so many times, I mean, that child might be the only child in the school that doesn't have sickle cell, that has sickle cell disease, you know, and so it was the relationships, you know, that kids were able to form with their tutors and with other students, you know, that was really so remarkable. I had a mother that came to the door and said, I need to see Dr. Sherney. And when that happens, like, oh goodness, I wonder what she needs to see me about. When I got to her, she was practically in tears, and she was saying, you know, Dr. Sherney, my son said, Mommy, you know that everybody in this program has sickle cell disease? You know, and she said, yeah, I told him yes. And he said, did you know my tutor has sickle cell disease? And he's big, you know, so it's almost a thought that if you had sickle cell disease, you didn't get big, you know. And so when we weren't able to continue the program this year, I think the biggest, I mean, we would always do satisfaction surveys with the parents and with the students and with the tutors. And we got pretty much good reviews. There were some kids that really didn't like yoga, you know, and they tried to, oh, I'm having pain. I can't, no, you have to do yoga, or you can't come back next week, or you can't, you know, go on the next fun event. You can't go to the basketball game if you can't do yoga. So that was a little bit of an issue. They like the boys like Tai Chi, the girls like yoga. I can put it that way. They all seem to love the food. They all seem to really love our caterer, because she got to know each one of them by name, and that was Miss Darlene, and so that was another kind of interaction. And some of the kids would actually go in and have a sit down with Miss Darlene, you know. So it was just kind of a nice, really family environment where there was some learning going on and there was some socializing going on. And the kids now are saying, Dr. Sherney, when are we going to be able to have Project Enrich again? So I'm really working hard to be able to get Project Enrich back. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. They have Karen in the middle of my screen, so I've been
Any
able
questions for Dr. Sherney?
and nod. Karen, I appreciate that, Karen.
Do we have any questions for Dr. Sherney? I have a couple questions in the chat box if anyone doesn't have. Let me unmute everybody. There's got to be a better way to do this, to unmute everyone. Do you have the ability to unmute yourselves?
Better layout or something like that. But y'all won't be looking at this layout because it's
Like somebody needs to mute.
Okay, so I'm gonna just let you unmute yourselves. There was two questions in the chat box. If I'm not doing these in order, I apologize. This is a kind of a dual rule. Can 504 and IEPs be used in private schools? And that's Nakia. And the answer to that question is yes. This is a federal program, so this is something that can be available in private schools and used in all schools.
And generally speaking, if you have an IEP, that automatically comes with a 504. A 504 is under the umbrella of having an IEP. Sometimes some individuals have 504s simply because if a young person breaks their ankle, so they have to be on crutches, so they can have a 504 where there's some limitations to their physical capabilities, like making it to and from class between bells. They might get some extra time. An IEP usually involves something with the educational piece, like they're involved in special education classes or something like that.
And if I'm not mistaken, once you get to college, it's not called 504 anymore, but there still are special accommodations. Is that correct, Andrea?
That is correct.
Yes.
And I think that's something that a lot of people miss. My sister was Dean of Students with Disabilities at SUNY. We were trying to make sure that people are aware that they can get special accommodations even after high school.
And one thing is very important about that, we encourage all of our young people when they are going to college to first seek out that office for, that has an ADA arm to them, American Disabilities Act arm to them, because there are certain special accommodations which really can benefit.
And I think it's really important that they seek out those schools. And I also think when we're talking to, and we always do this, when we're talking to our students about selecting colleges, that they, one of the highest factors is there good sickle cell care in the area that you're going? I mean, that has to be a top priority if you have sickle cell disease, that you go somewhere where you know you can get good care.
Yes.
Another question is from Dr. Pralford, says, did you have a chance to compare the experiences of those Just mute, wait a minute, it just, with those in the program, with those who weren't.
No, that's not something that we did. You know, we did do some pre and post testing the way you all did in your program, and it was, I don't know, it just didn't seem very reliable. We had to have a separate one for every grade, and we had to hire someone specifically to do that. You know, and I just don't know how helpful it was, but I know I didn't have a control group of students that weren't in Project Enrich compared to the group that were. I don't have that kind of data. It wasn't really a very data-driven program. It was more, I mean, I looked at all the graphs and things that we have some of that, but it was more driven from the heart of let's take care of these kids. You know, that's how it was.
So Derek is offering that if the private school does not receive federal funds, like only if the private school receives federal funds, that they're able to use that. If there's a reference for that, Derek, I'd be happy to include that or to take that into account. I'm not sure where, I didn't find that in any of the research, but if that is something, we need to know about that, because I want to make sure that we're giving the most up-to-date information for the IEP. Okay, so we will look into that. If you have a reference, please send it along in the post attendee information, and we'll have Shelley get that right out to everybody. So we have it is 3:41. So we're going to switch back over to the case and take a look at it. It's a quick one, so we want to make sure that we're being respectful of all of your time here. So let me move this and we'll click to the next slide. So in this case study, Michael's going to give us some information on that.
Okay, I just want you guys to look at this, and I know it can go much deeper than this, but basically we had an 11th grade student that actually did have a 504 plan, but as some of you may know, a 504 plan is supposed to follow you in school. How well it is implemented can depend on the school you're in or the grade you're in as it travels along with you. This particular student had missed 84 days of school due to hospitalization. And when I say due to hospitalization, I mean literally the hospital, was Children's obviously at the time, they could account for 84 different days. Grade point average was hovering around 2.1, but was automatically receiving AE. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that, they were getting an E for the class because of attendance, you know, due to their absences. And basically just taking a look at, I want to show you guys what we did.
Before we do that, we're going to ask the group how they would address in your area. How would you go about knowing what you learned, and even in your experience, how would you, does anyone want to take a stab at how you might address this type of case in your institution, or working with a family facing this situation? And again, if you want to unmute, I will stop sharing at that moment. Anybody?
This is Derek. I'll just chime in. Can you hear me, Andrea?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, yeah. So I guess first step would be to, well, meet with the patient to get their permission, but then meet with the school official, probably the start with the school counselor to address the issue in terms of making sure that they understand what the situation is, and start the process of, let me go back to, can you put back up the scenario a second?
Sure.
Andrea?
There you go.
Right. So if you said he already had a 504, is that correct?
That is correct.
Right. So I think at that point it would be just to discuss how we can make sure the provisions of the 504 are being implemented, and if we need to modify it in any way. And then you had mentioned, I think they have it here in Maryland too, but you have special sometimes the state will have special accommodations for in-home services for people who have, for students who have missed a certain number of days, and I think 84 days would certainly qualify for that special in-home tuition, tutoring, and they usually have a person who will come out to the home to provide tutoring if necessary.
Okay. Thoughts on that?
And I, you know, in addition to that, I mean, coming from the medical side, I would really like to explore what's causing all these absences, you know, and it could be that he's just that sick. And I wonder, are we really maximizing his care from a medical standpoint? Is he on hydroxyurea? Would he consider taking hydroxyurea? And is he depressed? And is that exacerbating his pain? Is he ever able to take pain medication and still go to school? Is he staying really well hydrated? Is he sleeping? You know, is he, you know, so I'd like to kind of, you know, is how overprotective, even in the 11th grade, is the mother? Is she like not sending him to school because she's afraid he might get sick, or is he really sick? You know, I think we would need some psychosocial evaluation in terms of that, so we could make sure. And I've even seen cases where people have been placed temporarily on a chronic transfusion program to get them to be able to graduate from high school, you know, to get them through a certain landmark, you know. So I would wonder about those kinds of things.
Well, those are all amazing things I hadn't really thought too deeply about, but we're gonna, I want to say, okay, I'm reading in the chat box, and we have some agreement with Derek. We have some, Linda says, ensure the child is getting the homework. And then Dr. Prover says, Derek, could you talk about legislation that passed to support this type of program? Can I hold that one for just a second while we look at the intervention, and then we'll come back to that and give Derek a couple minutes to collect his thoughts on that, okay? This is what actually was done.
Yes, and I want to speak to this. The first thing we do is really reach out, and you guys kind of touched on a little bit. I want to say that parents were a little bit of helicopter parents in this situation, where it wasn't necessarily, they didn't want to look at it as viewing the amount of effort that the student was putting into it. But also, one of the things we wanted to cover our bases by reaching out to the parents and make sure it was all right to engage this young person, but also reaching out to the staff of the school, because things that we had thought that would be, I mean, we may know about a person living with sickle cell and the different challenges and things that they face. The school pretty much didn't have any idea of what all was, what was important. So we did reach out to them. We really beefed up the assignment retrieval. What we found out, and I'll speak to this personally because I was the one serving the child didn't feel supported. So when they started to see the effort that we were, as an organization, we're going to get the work and making sure that they turn it in, but also we created a very close relationship with the school. So now I could call his or her counselor and say, I want to make sure that, you know, the assignments I picked up from a week ago, and then I took them back to the school, that they got credit for it. So now that the students started to see us really paying attention, they started to up the ante and they really responded. So we built a relationship with the school and the counselors. One of the things was the kid really had a tough time getting started in the morning. So they amended the classes so the core classes like English, English, math, physical education, they were put in the middle of the day because the child only had about a 4 or 5 hour window. They took them a while to get started, and they would fade out early in the latter parts of the day. So we put the study hall at the end of the day, and the classes that didn't mean that much, and really focused on the meat of their classes being in the middle of the day. And I'm proud to say that, you know, that student did graduate and graduated on time. But something as simple as one of the things I told you, they were, this child was receiving E's for their classes based on attendance, but they did not fully understand that here in Pittsburgh, and I'm assuming it's somewhat close, they have mandatory classes. The three most important classes you can have in high school are English, math, and gym. That child was being failed because they didn't participate in swimming. And we had to re-educate the school and tell them that child shouldn't be taking swimming, period. And we would have them write a paper on how low impact swimming can be beneficial to somebody because of the cardio, but don't expect them to get into the pool. So them are some of the things that we had done.
So, did you talk a little bit about
I couldn't hear that. But anyway, was there a way to talk to the school itself about Jim and patients with sickle cell? I'm a patient with sickle cell, and I had to have that same kind of excuse out of Jim when I was in school. And, it was difficult because, I took Jim for a good number of times, but I was always really bad at it. And then when I got to college, it was like, look, I can't do anymore. And so I talked to my doctor, who wrote a letter to the school on my behalf to exempt me, especially from the swimming part of gym, and, really basically from gym altogether. And I took other classes to fulfill that, I guess, requirement that Jim would have taken up.
Well, one of the things in this particular case that I think really helped is bonding with the school counselor.
Yeah.
Because they controlled a large portion of what that child's experience was going to be. So they were in charge of the child's schedule, really explaining to them and trying to make them a champion of sickle cell disease. I really thought was beneficial in the end for that particular child and their experience.
And did you all also talk to the patient, the students' parent, teachers? Each teacher, because you go to each different class, and each teacher has their own expectations, and a lot of teachers really don't know a lot about sickle cell students.
Right, and one of the things that we try to do, one of the first things we do, along with me personally, meet with the counselors, we would go in and do a professional development for the teachers. Because if you take any student, he or she probably has about 7, especially in high school, 7 or 8 teachers that they interface with every day. And so we would have the parents call to get them on our team and request a meeting with that nucleus of teachers that are going to be, sitting in the grades, and really hone down and explain to them what sickle cell is and what it's not. I mean, we would never say that he or she could only be a C student. We expect them all to be the best that they can be, but we wanted to make sure that they were providing the right framework for that child to succeed.
Right.
Good.
This is Rhonda. I just want to kind of back up that whole issue of engaging the schools, because I think that was a big part of the success of Project Enrich, because the homework helpers were in touch with the counselors and with the teachers and the tutors, and we had to get permission slips, the parents could sign off. And we had teachers that were emailing homework to the tutors and that kind of thing. And the teachers are really anxious to help the students.
Yes.
You have to engage them first. And I've had contact with schools. What I find is once you get in there, they are really so happy to have you, and they have so many questions. And I had one student that they invited me to the school, and when I got there, they had everybody in the auditorium. So all the administrators and all the students were there, and I gave a talk about sickle cell disease, and then the student living with sickle cell disease was able to speak. And then the kids came up to the microphone and asked questions, and they asked really good questions. And I know his whole experience in that school changed because of that. But one of the concerns is that sometimes the students don't want other students to know that they have sickle cell disease. So I was just curious about Ms. Armstead, if she, because if they don't want it to be disclosed, then you can't disclose it, and then that makes it difficult to really go and talk about it. But did you have that feeling as a child that you didn't want people to know? Because I find it to be a pretty universal concern.
Well, especially when I was in elementary school,
Right.
when I would tell the other students, they might say, well, why are you absent all the time? And I tell them I had sickle cell. They treated me like I had a communicable disease.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you catch it, and all that. But as I got older, my mom was a good advocate for me. And so I became an advocate for myself.
Right.
So we would both make sure that our teachers, after elementary school and everything, that they were aware of what was going on with me, why I had sickle cell. I mean, not why, but everybody knows why, basically. But, what that would do, how that would affect me, why I would be absent so many times, and, that I wasn't considered a dumb student. So make sure that, I did get the homework. I wanted to do my work. I wanted to be, involved with school. The only thing I really couldn't be involved with that I tried a lot to do, but I had the hardest time, was physical education. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, that self-advocacy is so important. Because initially it's the parents, but at transition, we all know how much difficulty we have at transition. So when patients call me with issues, whether it's how they're being treated or school or what have you, the first thing I say to them is, well, how do you think you might be able to handle this situation? And then I give them suggestions. I'm saying, so the next time that situation comes up, you need to be able to handle it, and then call me and tell me how you handled it. Because you're not always going to be there. So it's really just a push, as your mom did, I'm sure, pushed you to be able to self-advocate when you're well enough.
Yeah. Great. I have one question from Ms. Santiago.
Hi, good. Good afternoon.
I'm sorry, we have about 4 minutes left. I want to make sure you got your question in.
Okay, so I'm in New York City. I experienced a lot with sickle cell as my childhood. Going to school, I was absent 40 days because I had to go back and forth in the hospital. That was when I was 5 years old and in kindergarten. The education system here in New York, it sucks for me because all my life, I'm trying to get better. So, and the little bit of English that my parents know, because my mom and my father all came from Puerto Rico, migrated. And my question is to know, like, if it happens to another child that went through my experience, 40 days, how should I advocate about it? And especially they have a little bit English. The parents have, they don't speak much English because here in New York is diversities, Hispanics, Latinos, Africans, Asians, and everything. So what's my question?
Dr. Shari, take that one.
I'll try to take it. With the language barrier, that is a huge problem. There are a lot of, and maybe Derek can speak to it too, that there are a lot of laws that say that they have to be able to have a translator for you, and a lot of the brochures now about sickle cell disease are translated into Spanish, and I think that you can even have somebody who's a translator on the phone with you, and so to know as much as you could possibly know about your illness, so that you can teach people, and to make sure that you are asking, and people kind of get with me about this, but it's more with honey than you do with vinegar, so when you're having a problem in the emergency room, the more calm you can stay, and the more, and in every emergency room they have, or in every hospital, they have a patient advocacy person that you can ask for. You can call an ombudsman, but if you're having problems, you can ask for that person. And also in school, if you're in college, I'm not quite sure where you are, but the office of
Finished college years ago, but
students would be helpful.
I just want to
Okay.
know for another person that went through the same thing. I want to advocate.
I think just very quickly, I think the enforcement of this is really tough, right? I mean, I think it's one thing, I think, but like with everything else, knowing your rights can be very, very helpful. And so to the extent that, that's why with Andrea and Mike, if you have a 504 in place, you actually have legal protections. And so you would want to bring that to the attention of the schools, and they know it. But like everything else, sometimes folks have to be reminded. So in terms of the language barrier, I know you guys there in New York do have a program working with Spanish speaking, and so that's a challenge. But in terms of the law itself, it can be enforced. I mean, essentially the 504 an IEP comes out of a law which is an anti-discrimination law. And as Andrea said, it's a federal law, and they can get sued, and they don't want that. But that's why you have to advocate school-wide. I think the school counselor, we haven't mentioned the school nurse. Not all schools have some operate off clusters, but if you can also, because when you talk about teachers, you have to have the school counselor and the nurse, because they oversee everything. And they're sometimes your best advocate, because if Mr. Jones or Miss Smith is not doing what they're supposed to do, then the school counselor, as a part of the administration, can go to the vice principal or to the principal and deal with it that way. But enforcement is tough, because you hear these stories all the time of, well, I have a 504, but they didn't listen to it. And so you just have to have, that discussion in terms of what's next.
Also, can I say something? I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Yes,
we can hear you.
All right. So, hi, my name is Trey. I represent CS Kansas City Sickle Cell Foundation and Love and Fashion. I too have sickle cell, and I think for me, going to school, I think the best thing for me was knowledge. From young, my mother was very advocate about me knowing about my medical condition, and like Linda Armstead said, we were looked at as the children that we were contagious. People didn't want to be around us. We were touched. But once I got the understanding as to what sickle cell was, I was able to stand up for myself and say, I'm not contagious, and explain to the other kids. Eventually, I made more friends that understood what I was going through. And that was a vital part of my high school year, my elementary school year, because there were many times where I started getting sick. And for the friends who knew me, they came to visit me in the hospital and see me at home. They knew to look for certain signs, and they knew that when I started looking tired, that I needed to rest, or I drink some water. And there were times when my friends argued with the teacher, like, no, he's sick, he needs to relax. So like having the other students know what was going on was vital to me, because there were times where I got tired of talking to the teacher because the teacher didn't listen. But the students came to the hospital, saw what I went through, and they stood up for me. So I went from being the kid with the contagious virus to them becoming like my protectors, and it was very vital. And like I got into a lot of arguments with teachers about, like you guys said, drinking more water. We're sickle cell patients, we have to drink a lot of water. But then the back end of that isn't just drinking water, it's now having to use the bathroom excessively. And teachers want to argue with you about, you can't constantly leave the class. I was always a stubborn kid, I'm sorry, but I was like, listen, I'm not going to pee myself, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I got in trouble constantly for that. And we had to let them know, listen, I have sickle cell, I'm going to drink a lot of the bathroom, but my work needs to get done. To what you guys said in the beginning with the fire drill, I think it's important that even with sickle cell, the students still participate in the fire drill, because it would be unwise for them not to know how to properly escape from the school in the case of emergency. But I think the teachers need to understand that, because I used to get rushed out of class, and I argued with the teachers for that too. I said, no, I have sickle cell, I'm gonna go put on my coat, and then I'm gonna go outside. You're not just gonna rush me outside, I need to take care of my health first. So me having that knowledge, that understanding what my medical condition was, I was able to advocate for myself more. And even though sometimes I got into arguments with the teacher, I did it for a good reason, because I wasn't trying to jeopardize my health. Even inside the gym, certain activities I didn't participate in, but I still wanted to participate because I understood that I had a blood pathogen and I needed to have my body to be strong and stable. So we need to have exercise to keep ourselves going. We just have to know our limitations. So because I think the education doesn't just need to be on the doctors and teachers, but it can start from young with individuals who can understand that this is what the sickle cell can do to you, and this is what you need to do to defend yourself.
Right.
Awesome. We are over time. I thank you all. I would stay here forever because I love listening to people who are living with sickle cell disease, as my son is, and you give me such fire. So all of you on the call, I want to thank Dr. Sherney for coming on and being an expert, a great expert, and sharing your knowledge and your awesome program. We wish that we could talk a little bit more about the barriers and help do some problem solving, maybe about funding and looking for ways to help us fund these programs. And maybe that's a whole topic in itself. Please check in the chat box. I did say, we're looking for topics, presenters, case presenters. This is our echo. Every single person on this call, I think, can bring a case, present a case, present topics, and we'll work with you to help you find the research and the experts if we need to. We look forward to seeing you guys on April 15th at 3 p.m. And this will be our, this is our new, the channel, and we'll have all the links sent out ahead of time. I apologize for any miscommunication thus far, but I want you guys to stay happy, healthy, safe, and we'll see you next time.
And if I could just add one thing, Andrea, I did develop, as you know, an adult patient empowerment toolkit. And for all the individuals on the phone that are living with sickle cell disease, if you just email me your address, and Andrea can give you my email address, I'd be happy to send you. It has a blanket and a water bottle and a thermometer and a pill sorter, but the most important thing is a way for you to keep all of your medical record information, and also the ASH guidelines, and so just things that you would be able to just hand to a doctor who tells you that they don't know how to take care of you.
That's why I wear a medical alert bracelet.
Okay, good.
That's
Yep.
awesome.
So I'll send it to you, and then if you have any input or any questions, then you can give me a call. Okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Shelley, for sending it out. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.